Hi, this is Pamela Groppe Art, and welcome to the studio. Today we're going to do a Morning Glory Topiary. Now this is a three-part series of topiary paintings that I know you'll enjoy. So we're going to start out with the Morning Glory, and I will share with you both. I'll show you my practice piece. This was my practice one, and I've started to put some butterflies on it. That's not part of the tutorial. It's just something I thought would be pretty on the painting, but it'd be easy for you to do because I do have a monarch painting tutorial on the website and on YouTube that you can follow along with. And then this is the one that we paint together. So you notice there is a difference, and that's fine because every single solitary painting you do, even if you copy from like a pattern, it will come out different, and that's a good thing. So just have fun painting, follow along, and make it your own. I know you can do this one. You may think the Morning Glories are a bit difficult, but they're not really. Once you break it down and just play with it, you'll get the swing of it really quick and easy. So let's get started painting our Morning Glory Topiaries. So let's get started on the terracotta pot. Now I have a whole tutorial on just painting terracotta pots, and I did a series with different plants in them. This is the topiary series, and each one of the pots will be painted the same, even though they won't look exactly the same, because you can see I drew on my pot, and here's a couple of the demos I did. So you can see that one there, and you see that one there, and they're not exactly the same. They're a little bit different. So no two will ever come out exactly the same, and we don't want them to. So first of all, let's get going with our colors. Now, the underneath of the crackle coat is teddy bear brown. I wanted a brown, but not anything too dark. Then I did the crackle coat, and I have a whole tutorial and video on how to use the crackle medium. And then I went over it with a vintage white. I didn't want stark white. I wanted something vintagey. So that's what we used. So now for the terracotta pot, we are going to use real brown, cafe latte, and pueblo. So that's the colors that we're going to put out on our palette and start painting. I will use the 3/4 inch flat for this to fill in quickly, because this is going to be a fast and simple terracotta pot. So now I have the colors on my palette. This is the real brown, this is the pueblo, and this is the cafe latte. I probably will get some vintage white out here too, or warm white, either one will work, as a touch of a highlight color. So on my 3/4 inch flat, I'm just going to load up the terracotta and just fill in. Nothing fancy. And this is watercolor pencil, so it will just come off and or just blend into the paint. Need a little bit of water to help spread this. It's a little thick. And these pots, they're not the one with the wide rim. These ones have a little round lip on them, and I chose that because I really like that round lip. And there's kind of the back of it, curves back there, which a lot of that's hidden by greenery. But this little round lip, and then I will just kind of get a little bit of the darker in there, so I kind of differentiate that line. Just blend it in, just so you visually have it in there. And you still see there's a little bit in my brush, a little bit of that real brown. And you can also use burnt umber. And I need to draw my line on this side so I know where I'm at. Paint's really thick, so I'm just filling in. I'm not being perfect. You see my line's not perfectly straight. This is a representation of a pot. We're not going for perfection. And it all will come out in the wash because the flowers really are the star of the show. The pot is just holding them in. So I'm going to go into a little bit of the real brown, and I'm going to pull some shading along this edge. And the paint's still wet, and it's not pulling it up yet. You get to a point where the paint will start to pull up, and that's when you stop and you let, see there, it's starting to pull up a little areas. So we're going to rinse out the brush just a little bit because it was getting dry. And then we're going to go from the other direction, and we're going to get some of the coffee latte into the brush, and we're just going to pull some lighter colors over here. If ever it's too light, you just add a little bit more of the Pueblo and you pull it in there. And if it helps, put one of the others you finished up here to kind of look, get an idea. You can see where this one's got a coating on it. You know, right here it's lighter and here's it darker. And I even added a touch of black because I wasn't getting quite the depth. Let me see, this other one hasn't been varnished yet, so it might not have the glare. But you see that's real dark along here. You can see the coffee latte right there. And here's where I did the white. And it all just kind of comes together. No need to be fussy about it. I'm going to finish the lip here. Not finish it, I'm going to put in the center of the lip. And what that does, you're going to go into the coffee latte a little bit with, I'm sorry, I try to get my palette up here for you. And I dipped the tip into there. I meant into the vintage white. You see how it just brings that color up a little bit? Now that we're not finished with that. That's just getting that lighter color right in the center of the lip. And we'll come back later for more. Now I'm just brushing what's on my brush. This had coffee latte, some Pueblo, and the white in it. I'm wiping out my brush on a towel, and I'm going to go back into Pueblo because I don't want it to be so just blank there. I want it to blend in. And there's a point where you'll want to let it dry, and then you can come back and glaze in some more. Right now I'm working wet on wet just to get that in there. And usually I do this the dark because we're going to put greenery and stuff in here, but we want this kind of to fade into the background. So I'm going to fill that with the real brown. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to work on it a little bit more. So I'm going to get coffee latte in the real brown. I need to get some of that more real brown onto my brush. And I'm going to do, I guess I should bring this down. I'm going to do the trunk. You can see the circle I have for the mane. And I kind of wiggle in and out. You see that? And then the trunk down at the bottom is a little bit wider as it goes into the thing. And that gives it, because when you're doing topiary, they're not just a single straight. They have some little wonkiness in them. So I've rinsed out my brush in my water. And I'm just side loading a bit of the warm white. And I'm getting some of the coffee latte. And then we're just going to follow kind of a little snaky, there. So it kind of gives it some dimension. So again, let's let this dry, and then we'll come back and we'll work on the pot a little bit more, a little bit later once it's dry. It's got a pretty thick coat on there. And then we'll start, in the meantime, on our top. So now let's put in our orb, the backdrop for our flowers. This one's the Morning Glory, and I, on this one, did not do that. I put the Morning Glories on, and then I came back and put the greens in between. I think I'm going to start, I think it will be easier with the background greenery put in, and then we can go over top of it. So I basically have, right now I have basil green. This is a plaid folk art color. I like this light green, and thicket. So there's other kinds of brands that have this lighter green. There's also, I think there's a Hauser green light that is very similar, and anything lighter green. I didn't want to go with my usual bright lime green, not lime green, what is it, citrus green. I wanted these to be more muted. So I have my 3/4 inch flat, which I'm dampening and then tapping off on a towel. I just get the excess. Sorry, I'm knocking things over. So it's not dripping, but it is wet. And I am just going to double load with the 2 colors. You don't have to have any rhyme or reason, just double load. And then just come in and slip slap this color in here. If you want it a little bit lighter, bring in a little bit of the light colors. You don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle, because you can just go with it as you put on the Morning Glories. I'm kind of in the circle, and there we have it. Don't overblend. Just get that color in there. And let it be. I'm making sure I've got the circle covered for the most part. You see it's not a perfect circle. There's a little bit piece coming out here, etc. So that is all good. So that is our backdrop for our Morning Glory flowers. And we'll let that dry. So let's work on the pot while that up there is drying. Now I notice I had kind of an indentation here, and this is kind of bowing out this direction. So I'm going to take my Pueblo, and I'm going to get a little bit on my palette. This is where it was before it's dried, so no worries there. And I think I'll come back in with my 3/4 inch flat. Still has a little bit of green. I did try to rinse it out, but there's a touch in it. It's not going to hurt a thing. And I'm getting this on here, making sure I have a nice chisel edge. And I am going to straighten up this edge just a hair. It's okay if it's a little bit wonky, but that was just a little too much. So I'm going to let that dry. I'll bring in some more Pueblo while it's out here on my palette. And I may straighten up this edge just a little bit as well. And that's all very, very good. Now I'm going to get my real brown. So I'm getting a little real brown. Whoops, I slopped some. That's okay. I can fix that. And I still have the Pueblo, which is the terracotta color, in my brush. And I'm just going to get into the real brown a little bit again. And bring this in from this edge. Be careful. Don't be sloppy like me. And I'll just finish filling that in with that bit. Get it off the brush there. Now I'm going to rinse my brush. Get that excess brown out. I'm going to go back into the Pueblo and pull it back across here. I pick up a little bit on my brush, but that's okay. Remember, the pot's not the star of the show. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get just a hair of the real brown, and I'm going to work it into the brush so it's just barely on there. And I'm going to just drag it lightly underneath that lip so it gives it a little bit of shadow under that lip. If you feel an area is too dark, go back into your Pueblo and just kind of smooth it out, blend it out. You still have some of the depth of the color in there, yet it's not too much. So I'm going to get some vintage white onto my palette. Let me see if I get the vintage white. Yeah, this is the vintage. The other one was warm white, I think. I wanted the vintage. It has a little more depth of color, a little more ecru or off-white. Okay, so I still had the Pueblo in my brush, and I just got a little bit of that warm white, and I'm just streaking. Just bringing in a touch. Going over that darker right on that side. It's a little thick there. So, more Pueblo. I'm running out of Pueblo. And I'm just getting the Pueblo on there. Just pull it over. That just a touch. Just a touch. And we're all good. This is good. Now I want to bring in some more Pueblo right in the lip of the pot. Right where it's a lighter color in there. And you notice I have a little bit of a bow stroke. It's not perfectly flat across. It's all doing good. So there, our pot is basically finished. Now I think we can go and we can put our pattern on the top. So here you can see the pattern drawn on the orb of greenery. And we're going to do the first one, the first topiary in the Morning Glories. And the colors I'm going to use for the Morning Glories are Cobalt Hue, Look at Me Blue, and Wicker White. I think those are it and will be enough. If I want to bring in a darker blue, I'll grab one after a while. But I think this should work just fine. I'm always changing things up, so don't be surprised if something does change. So I'm going to start with let me see, I'm going to show you my first one. This is the first one. And let's start with the one that's on the back. Showing it's the back of the flower. I'm going to use some Look at Me Blue on my palette and some Cobalt Hue. These other spots are dry, so it's not going to hurt to put it right on top of them. And some Wicker White over here so I don't get in it accidentally. Oops. Okay, so we're going to use a number 10 flat. This is a Donna Dewberry flat brush from the multi-pack that I often refer to. I've also used Low Cornell flat, Brights. I like those as well, but was it Low Cornell or was it maybe it was the Royal Majestic. This is the Royal Majestic with the black handles. I've used their Brights as well, which work. So let's start off with Cobalt Blue and a touch of the Look at Me Blue. And I'm just going to go along the edge. See the upper part where it's curled back on itself? That's going to be a bit lighter. And right now we're going to go over these two parts. I mean this part. And you may have to do a couple coats to get the coverage you want. And all of that. But we're just going to bring that blue in there, and I'm just going to streak it down. The pattern, when I traced it on the graphite paper, was newer, so it made it a bit dark for the lines. But that's okay. I will make sure that they get covered. And you notice I'm not being super careful with where the dark blue is, because I want those streaks in there. And I'm just bringing it down. This is where the leaf comes up over. Leaf comes up over where it comes up onto the flower. And you know, sometimes these are much longer and where the leaves come up is lower. I was looking at pictures of my actual Morning Glories in my garden, and that's how it was. So you notice how it's got a dry edge there on the dark blue? I'm going to just pull some more up there. pull some more up there. And it's all good. So it streaks down in there. You see the streaks of color? No two Morning Glories are exactly alike. I'm just making sure to get over those graphite lines. I'm usually much more careful of not getting dark graphite lines if I'm transferring a pattern, just because they can be a touch difficult to go over with, especially with some colors. So that's good. You could always bring in more of the dark blue, but I wanted the darker blue underneath where this is curling over, so you had the shadowing or shading underneath. So there's that flower. We're going to let it dry before we go any further. Now I'm going to do, this is a bud. And the buds, they usually are very light. I may go back over it with white, and they have like a spiral look to it. But I'm just going to bring this up and this up here. And then I can add a touch of the spiral shape later. Got a little wider than I wanted, but it's all good. In fact, if I wanted to pick up some of that paint, I rinsed out my brush, dried it a little bit. It's still quite a little bit damp, but it's clean, and I can pull up that color. I can always go over where I need to later. So we'll just leave that be because it's wet. All right, this flower is facing this way. It has a leaf under it, and usually I put the leaves in first. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to put some basil green on my palette. Not a lot because I've just got a few leaves. I probably should go around and do all the leaves that are that way. Sap green and the basil green. And I'm going to turn this so I can stay in the camera for you, but show you how to do this leaf that's coming out from underneath this flower. So I'm going to get the basil green, mostly basil, on my brush, and then side load into the sap green. I like the basil green for this because it's very muted. You could still use the citrus green. Citrus is one of my favorite colors in green. I love the brightness of it, but for this particular design, I wanted something more muted. So there, we're gonna just shape that leaf, bring in a stem or a line there, seam, and there we have that leaf. Now, if you wanted to do plainer leaves, and I will show you what I mean. Here's another leaf here. You could just go in with the basil green and fill in that. I still had some sap in my brush, but you see how, just fill it in. You don't have to be perfect. The leaves are not the star of the show. They are merely there for backdrop. So that works that way too. You don't have to do my wiggle leaf if you're finding that difficult. I just have done them so many times that they're so fast and easy for me that I find them pretty cinchy. So I fall back on those all the time. So here's another one. Try not to get them too big. I want them to stay smaller. I want more basil in there. And there we have another leaf coming out from underneath that one. So let's get back to, I think that's all the leaves coming. Oh no, wait, here's another one coming from underneath. So look around for any of the leaves coming from underneath the flowers and just put them in. Now, leaves for Morning Glories are rather heart-shaped. So just keep that in mind. Now, a lot of times I like to do the light against the dark, but you can also do the dark against the dark to produce a leaf. And it has another effect. So let's see any other leaves. I don't see any. Okay, again, back to our Morning Glories. Now this one's probably dried, so I can go back in with the Look at Me blue, and then I'm going to tone it down with some white. I shouldn't say tone it down, I mean lighten it. Make it much lighter. And then we're just going to fill in that area. And you notice it has two tones in it. I'm getting some streaking with the white because I didn't blend it completely, and that's what I want. So there's where it flips back upon itself. Now I still have some light in my brush. So, you know, a lot of them are lighter in the center. You see this has a little dot in the center. That's the little, I don't know what I call that on. Little center. And there I just pulled the light color up and outwards, following that line. And I'll do that the same over here since I have this light color in my brush. I was careful not to touch that green because that would have drug into my color there. And you could actually lighten up one of them even more if you wanted to. Just pull that in there. You may have to rework this later because we're going to go back over this with the darker blues. But that's a way to start that center. Now this one right here is facing us, so we'll just pull a little of that light center in there. Okay, we'll do that one here too. All right, I'm going to wipe my brush out on a rag. So I'm just going to wipe it out. I'm not going to rinse it. Just pulling that color out, and then I'm going to load again with the two colors. Just blend them together on my brush. And I'm going to go along the outside edge of the flower. Now I should have probably done the calyx of that, and I can come back and do that because I want it to sit beneath this flower. And I didn't notice it there until I started to do it. But it's all good. Now while I had the lighter in the brush, I should have done the back side of the calyx. So I'm going to go ahead, mix up some of the lighter color again. I shouldn't say calyx, the bottom of the flower where it comes up. So I'm just going to tap it in there so it makes that tubular shape. And this one too. So we're good. Again, wipe out the brush, reload with the two darker colors, and we'll continue on this petal. Now this one had come up, down, and up. Blend those colors in. Now we'll go back into that mix and we'll do the same. It's getting a little dry, so I need to bring in a little bit wetter paint. I want it to blend in. Do you see how it's streaking up into that? And I'm following the curve of the flower. You see they had the indentation right there. So we can leave that alone. I can come back and work on it some more after a bit if I so desire. Let's go to this flower here because it's a little bit different. It's facing us more. So you see how it goes here instead of it facing that way, like this is facing us more. So I will start by using the two blues. And if ever your brush feels like it's getting gloopy, go ahead and rinse it out and reload. I'm going to follow the outline of the flower. with the dark on the outside, the light on the inside, and you can certainly reverse that at any time. In fact, we'll do one like that just for the hay of it soon. So we've got the two colors on there. You can kind of drag them in, follow these little loop-de-loop lines, and then go into your white. I did not clean my brush. So just pull from the center and try to follow how it's going around that center. And let me see, let me get the dot in there. The dot, and then I gotta wipe my brush, I have too much white in it. Then we're gonna do the same. Pull it out, pull it out, pull it out. You see how it's making the streaking where it's following the flower? And if you want to bring the blue back in, wipe out your brush, double load with the blue, and then pull it in from the edges. You're going to get some of that white in there. If you want to add just the darker blue, go right ahead and just follow the shape of the petals. Can you see me doing that? Hopefully not getting my hand in the way. I'm watching what I'm doing and not the screen to see what it looks like. So you see how that's the center. Now we're going to come back later and we're going to put the yellow dot in there. And if any time it just doesn't look right, you can go back and rework it. Like get a little more white in there and pull them just gently. Don't go too far. Don't get too fussy with it because you'd be surprised at how everything works together in the long run. So I'll show you the picture of this one. You see how this one looks? And that's that flower right there. So every single one will look different. So no worries on that score because you don't want every one of them to look exactly alike. So let's go to this one. This one is very similar to this one, but I'm going to do, like I said, I'm going to reverse the blues. So this one, the Look at Me blue will be on the inside edge and the cobalt blue will be on the outside edge. No, that other way. I mean, the Look at Me blue will be on the outside edge and the cobalt will be on the inside. Now I was looking at flower pictures of some of mine, and there was a type, and it had very almost pointy corners. And these are more rounded. I have some that were very rounded, much these dark blue, and then others that. So I need to practice doing the ones that are more pointy. I'm going to do the dark, following along that. And see how that works. Now I'm going to go back into the white. And I'm just going to pull from that center point. Just streak it. Can you see what I'm doing? Nope, you can't. I'm getting my hand in the way. So I'm pulling from the center and shaping that flower. If I want to give it a little bit more of a lighter edge, I'm going to go in to the white and that blue in areas, like maybe right along here. Just for the hay of it. Okay. It's all good. We can put the white dot there, which will come back and give it a little bit of yellow. You know, they usually have just a hint of yellow in the center. So let's do the center one where it's facing towards us. And to begin with, it can be much rounder. Much rounder. And let's give it some shape. And we can come do some negative painting later to give it even more some really good edges. So can you see how I'm just getting that shape in there? I didn't follow the pattern at all. The pattern was a little narrower, but I wanted it to be done this way. So here's the dot, and we're just going to pull out from the center as I did on the others. Pull it out. Right here in the front. Wiping my brush out. Actually, I should rinse it out. It's getting a little gloppy. And then I'm going to make sure I dry it well. And then I'm going to go in and get some of this darker blue with a hint of the lighter blue on it. And I'm just going to bring in some from the outer edges. Need some more of that dark blue. The white mixes in because it's still wet. Just kind of blends it in there. And sometimes I work it until I like what it looks like. Then I may walk away, leave it be, and then come back later and fuss with it some more if I feel it needs it. Okay, this one again is very similar to these two in its shape and design. So let's go ahead and do that one. You know, you could basically skip over this if you've mastered the other ones. This one is just the same. I'm loading the Look at Me blue and the cobalt blue. And I'm just going to follow the edge of, you don't have to be perfect. You can go over the edge. You can reshape the edge just so it has a little bit of difference between the others. Maybe a little bigger, a little, who knows what. The possibilities are endless. So I'm going to bring in some streaks this way. Yep, I went over the edge and that's A-okay. It's a little wonky, but it makes it much different. Okay, I'm going to go into the white. And I think I'm just going to go with just white. I got a little too much on my brush. Brushed it off and now I'm just doing the tip. And then here's the center. So I'm going to go up. And that is still wet, so it's going to blend in. It's going to pull some of that blue. Letting it go a little bit wider. And if you look at some of them, they actually have like a stripe on them. So my brush has still got the same white with a little bit of the blue mixed in. And I'm just bringing in some of those stripes. And this one would be right here. You don't have to do that. If it's a little too stark for you, you can go right back over it with the blue. I personally am kind of liking a rinsed out my brush. Let me see if I can soften some of those edges a little bit. All right. So that's dry. Now I'm going to try to dry brush some of this on there. So that means getting some paint on your brush and you're just wiping out just about all of it. And I'm just going to, it's a little wetter than I had figured, but it's okay. We'll let that dry. If I have to go over it later, I will, but I might just love it. Okay, so we've got all of those put in. Now that one, remember I was going to finish that and then go back over it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a liner brush. You see this liner? I want some of the lighter blue mixed with the white. Look at me blue and the wicker white. And I'm just going to kind of go over that line. And I'm trying to think of how they swirl. So it's almost like an S. An S. And then I'm going to, you could use your number 10 flat, or you can use a filbert to do the next step, which I'm going to put on the calyx. I got a little warm in here, and so my paint's drying quickly on my palette. But I'm just going to start on the chisel edge, push, lift, push, lift. That one I was watching the camera instead of what I was doing, so it kind of went off wonky. But push, lift, push, lift. And that holds your little bud on there. I didn't cover that blue, and instead of make that calyx bigger, I'm just going to go in with some blue with my liner and just fill that in. It all works. It all works. Okay. So right here, I want that back there to be a tiny bit lighter. So I'm going to, or at least have some streaks coming up that are a tiny bit lighter. Just streak it in there. Come back with some of the darker blue, the cobalt blue, I should say, and pull that back down into it. So you're getting a good blend. And hopefully the glare from my overhead light's not keeping you from seeing what I'm saying. Okay. So I think that edge needs a little bit more of the look at me blue, and I'm out. So I need to put some more of my, if ever it looks like an edge or something needs a bit more color, just go right ahead, go in and do it. And then I'm just going to load my brush only with that color on the corner. And then I'm going to recoat that. You notice when I went over that white spot, but that white spot's still so bright that it's coming through, and it still is a lighter color showing through. Okay, so we got that calyx done, and so I'm going to go back over it with just, see if I can just go back over it with the darker blue and see if it's enough. Hopefully it's not too wet. So there, we got that. Good. All good. So this middle one is still bugging me. I haven't quite mastered that center yet. So I'm going over it with just the cobalt blue, the white. Following kind of the direction of the flower. And then I'm going to do some of the areas with the darker blue. Not all of them, just some. And you see this, it has kind of a dry edge. I'm not liking that dry edge, so I'm going to come back over it. Alrighty. So that one is done. I have another bud right there that I need to do, and I'm going to turn my piece around because then we'll do this other back facing one. Oh dear, I don't know, I don't remember doing that. Oh well, I'll have to put maybe a flower down there. Okay, so I need to get some more cobalt on my palette. I don't put out a lot of paint because it can dry pretty quickly, especially if I've got a fan going in here. I left my heater on too long and it got just a little too hot in here. So what I'm going to do is starting on a chisel edge, and I'm just pulling that up. I had loaded, double loaded with the two blues, the Look at Me blue and the cobalt blue. And I just did that one right next to that one, and then kind of gave it a little bit of the seam there. And I'm going to go ahead right into the calyx. If a little bit of blue mixes in, I'm okay with that, because it all comes together in the end. Keep reloading my brush. I don't know if you can see me do that. I might probably pull it too far back. And then I fix that. So there we go with those. Oh, now I'm going to start this one just as I did before. I'm going to have the two colors of blue, the Look at Me blue and the cobalt blue. And I'm going to do the same as I did before. Just follow the outline, leaving the turned part of the flower bare. I have a little bit too much water in my brush, and that's why it's very thin. I'm going to have to go over it again. That's why a lot of times I don't rinse out the brush unless it's really getting gloppy, which can happen. So I will have to go back over that. But in the interim, we will go into do our other calyxes. And we're going to do them exactly the same as we did the ones for that. I just wiped my brush out. I didn't rinse it because the blues are not going to show up. So let's see, let's do this one. Put that little dot, green dot there, chisel edge, streak up. For some reason the dot's over there. Maybe I should have done the dot there, but it's all good. I'll cover it with a leaf. So sap green and the basil green in my brush. And you just do each one. Doesn't have to be perfect. Going for an effect, not realism. And you'd be surprised at how fun painting can be when you let go of the desire to be perfect. It really makes a difference in your enjoyment. Okay, there's the dot down there. So I'm just going to try to follow it this time rather than change the course. Okay, I really do need to get some fresh basil. It's so gloppy. There we go. I got some of that lighter green going in there. All right. I am going to rinse out my brush because the basil's drying and causing my brush to be a wee bit troublesome. So, fresh paint. I think my sap green is still doing good. It was my basil that had gotten out of control. Double load the brush. Makes a big difference when the paint is flowing properly. Now that one I have to go over again, so I'm not going to do that one. but I will do this one. And I have too much water in my brush. Goodness gracious. Okay. Reloading. Let me see. Let me dab that so it doesn't cause a problem. And dot. Chisel edge, stroke, chisel edge, stroke, chisel edge, stroke. So this is all well and good. I'm looking as I'm talking to see. Now this one, see, I need to put a leaf there. And you can go in and add more leaves. I want them mostly to be... Okay, back to where I was saying. We can add some leaves in here in a bit to fill in. We don't want to be too busy with leaves. We just will give indications of them and all of that. So let's see. We're going to finish this one up, I do believe, and get that one going. So back to our palette and our blues, cobalt and Look at Me blue. And we're going to work it in our brush. And then I'm going to go back around as I did before. And it's dragging because the paint is drying on my palette. But we'll just reload it again. Work around the edge. Work around the edge and then bring the streaks up. And follow the shape of the flower. So it gives the eye the indication of the curves and all of that. This one, I want it to come around and then come this way. Some of those streaks in there. Rinse my brush out, and this is where we're going to mix the the white with the Look at Me blue to make a much lighter blue. And then we'll do this curved edge. I'll have to go back over that. The paint was a little too thin, but that's all right. It's doing the job. I'm going to go in and do the calyx. And I'm getting the sap green and the basil green on my palette. The sap is getting pretty thick, but I think we can make it. There's the little dot and then the chisel edge. Lift, press, lift, press, lift. And that makes your little calyx and drag in a stem if you want, or you can go wait and put it in edge. That's almost dry. Let me show you on this one. That one has a little bit of the darker, a little bit of the blue. Look at Me blue. I just had to dampen my brush a little bit. And I just want that edge to have a little bit of a darker along the outside edge. But remain lighter on the inside edge. I'm out of Look at Me blue again. Mixing it with the white to do this one again. Am I in the camera? Yes, I am. All right. And if I want to shadow there, a shade that, I guess I could go into the cobalt blue and just pull in touches here and there along this outer edge to add that. And if you totally hate it, go right back over it. But you notice right here, the darker blue is right underneath there. That makes it look like it's shadowed. or casting a shadow from the lip over the flower. I don't know what else to call it. The edges of the flower coming over. So I'm looking at everything. That flower isn't to my liking. So I will go back into the Look at Me blue. I might even have to grab some of that cobalt and mix it and just go back over it. Okay, that's doing good. I'm going to put the little dot here, nestle it in there, nestle it in there, and I will nestle it in there. And we will call that good. That one, I'm finding that a little troublesome. So I'm going in, just side loading the darker blue, the cobalt blue. I keep saying darker blue, but it's cobalt. And I'm going along the outside edge, just adding a little darker color around that edge. Okay, we are good. So I'm going to get some more sap green since my sap green was so gloppy. And we're going to add a few leaves. Now, I don't want them to be a lot of leaves, just some here and there. And I got too much sap green on there. And I'm just going to add some leaves or leaf shapes. And you notice I went a little bit over that edge. And add our little stems if we need to. And some leaf shapes. They don't have to be perfect. Nothing needs to be perfect. And this one I loaded just mostly with the basil. And to do the negative painting, like I want to create some edges on this. So I'm just going to go in and make like a triangle into the corner of that flower. Same here. Just go in and take a slice out of those petals. Let's add some indications of leaves. Just getting a little bit of the basil. Every now and then I pick up some sap on the brush. Little leaves, some little bit bigger leaves. We don't want it too busy. All right. So we got that so far. Now I'm going to put in what I call, or are called, shadow leaves. You can use floating medium. I have glazing gel here. I'm going to put a puddle on my palette. I'm going to load my brush with the glazing gel, kind of blend it into my brush, and then I'm going to pick up a little bit of the darker green. And I want this to be very transparent. So as I go around, I'm adding leaves that are transparent. Now, I had drawn another pattern on here I was going to do, and I changed my mind, and that watercolor pencil's still showing. So I'm going to just rinse that out of there. I have to take off that leaf because I didn't notice it when I put that leaf on there, but that's all good. So again, dipping in the glazing medium. This time I'm getting basil. Very transparent. You're just going to put the indication of some leaves out here. Some shadowing, shading, whatever you want to call it. Shadow leaves. Now we're also going to shadow the flowers a little bit. So again, loaded it. I'm getting a touch of the cobalt on the corner. Well, that's a little too much. Let me work it out. And then take it around the flower edge. And it just casts a bit of an interesting shadow. Gives it an added glow. And this is completely optional. You don't have to add this touch of glow at all. You can do the same with the green on the leaves, if you so desire. Go over the greenery with adding that shadowing. Shading is on the inside, shadowing's on the outside. Or at least that's my understanding. I could totally be all wet. And I don't care. Okay, there we go. That's a little too dark. But you know what? It might work after all. I may decide that I like it that way. This, to me, just adds a fun little touch. Alrighty then. Now on my other one, I added the hint of yellow in the centers because a lot of mine have that. This is daffodil yellow. And all I'm going to do is that's pretty, this is getting pretty used up, so I don't have it where I could just put a bubble up. So I'm just going to tap the corner of my brush into that and add that. That white's still a little bit wet. It's not a stark yellow. Let me see that one. Touch a little more in there. Let me see if I can do the pulling up a little bit into the... No, I'm not liking that. So we'll just leave that one be, but we won't add any more yellow. We'll just go with the white, the lighter colors. I just added a touch of the cobalt to my brush and went over some areas that I found annoying. And sometimes you can overdo it. I have a tendency to do that at times. Go back and forth, back and forth. Okay. So now let's go back down and finish the pot. Finish up the pot. We will put some green in there. Now you could do it with a big flat brush. You can do it with a scruffy. I'm going to do this one with a scruffy. I'm just going to add some mossy color around the base. I don't want to cover the lip entirely, but just give it a bit of moss there. And if you want to lighten it up a little bit, touch into the white, give it a little bit of, let it kind of fade away. You don't want it too wavy. So you just give it that hint there of color. I could add a bud or something there to cover that, or I can add a leaf. Let's see how a leaf looks. We can always change it if we don't like it. So basil and some of the sap, and just put it in there. Just a leaf fell down, and let's see, more moss. I want this to be lighter leaves. Just hints of leaves. They don't need to be stark. And on the other one, and I'll show you that it's totally optional. I'm not going to do it on this one. Oh, I'm sorry. I got right out of it. I was doing little leaves and didn't even show you. I just put some leaves here. You see how this one, I did a vine up this trunk. I guess I could do that for you. And a little bud right here. I'm starting to do some butterflies on it, but that's not part of this lesson. I was just playing around with it. So let's do the stem, and it's just a couple of colors. The moss and sap and the basil green. I guess I was thinking of moss with that. And you just do careful little vine. Now we're going to do it from the edge. Like it's coming from under. We're going to go over and let it go back under. You see that? And then we'll do a leaf. And we can do a bud there if you like. If not, just do leaves. I know this is getting a little long, so we'll just do some shadow leaves here. Nothing too schmancy. And we'll call it good. Now, along the bottom, you notice there's some shadowing, and we'll put that in now. That's real brown and a touch of black with the blending gel. So, where's my real brown? Oh, here it is. See if I can find a bare spot on my palette. You don't need hardly any, just a touch, especially of the black. So I have my brush. This is a number 12 flat. I've been going between the 12 and the 10 flat. So I'm just getting the blending, or what is it? The glazing medium. And I'm just getting a touch brown in there. Let's do brown. And we'll make it wider as we get further away. I'm just scuffing it in there. Just scuffing along. Going to get a little bit more. I'm going to make sure I have plenty of glazing. And then just a hint. Black is super strong. And I've probably got too much black in there. Get more glazing, pick up more glazing, glazing medium. And just streak that black in there. And you just let that be. My brush is very dry now. And then I'm just going to wipe it out, and I'm going to pick up the glazing medium. There's a tiny bit of that brown in my brush, and see, it's enough to bring some shadowing along this edge. Yes, it is. Just shading it. So it's casting a bit of a shadow there. You can even shadow underneath this. Make it blend in. And the same with my glazing medium over there. Same with underneath the greenery. along the edge. I noticed my trunk needed a little more texture. So that pretty much finishes our pot. If you wanted to add a little bit of highlight over here, you could do that with the yellow, or you can do it with the white. Same way, you go into the glazing medium, hint of white. On my other one, I did it with the yellow, and it worked. So I know now I'm just dinking around. And there you have your Morning Glory Topiary painting. It's not all fitting in the camera right now. Right here, it seems like there's a bare spot. You could put in another bud, or you could actually add different flowers. Like if you wanted some white frothy flowers like Queen Anne's lace or just something little like that, it works. That could work too. So let's compare our two topiaries and see what they look like side by side. And we'll see the difference. Never ever, oh, you know what? We need to do the edging, the shadowing on the edges, and I will show you that in just a minute. But you notice the pot on this one is bigger. The pot here is bigger than this one. It's a little more tapered. And between the two, I think I like this one better. So you know what? Like I said, they're never two the same. This one has a shorter trunk. That one has a longer trunk, probably because this pot is smaller. So that's how it just went. I can see it's a little bit closer to the top than this one. You see, it all works. It's all good. And if worst came to worst and you had the one canvas you did and you hated it, paint over it, do it over. It is not that big of a deal. You would not believe how many paintings I've painted over because I just did not like how they turned out. So, okay, we are going to go along and shade the edging to give it some darkening, some aging, vintage look. I'm getting some more of the glazing medium onto my palette. I have the 3/4 inch flat, and I'm just working into the brown there. I'm running out of space on my palette, and I'm just going to work it along the edge. And I don't want it to be perfect, even nothing. So I'm going to put that in there, a little bit of the brown. We'll go along the edge, go over it where it goes over the side. Has different thicknesses. And you know what? If there's an area that you really hate, grab your towel. I have it on my finger. Dampen it. You could do this with a paper towel as well. Doing this one-handed. I dampened it and then just go along and lighten an area. I also sometimes just get the paint on here and I'll rub it on instead of using the brush. But this time I'm going to use the brush. More glazing medium. The brown, work it in, go up and down the side. Keep adding more to my brush. So to finish this up, the edging, the aging around the edge, I just continued on as I began to show you. I had the glazing medium in my brush, side loaded the real brown, and just went along the edges and finished aging it so it had a little bit of dimension and vintage look. It goes well with the crackle, etc. And that, my friends, is how to do the Morning Glory Topiary. So the next one we will do, I will show you how to do the hydrangea topiary. That one's even easier for you to finish and do.